every single mushaf that exists today or has ever existed is written in something called Uthmani Codex, which is the style of writing in which the Qur'an was written. This style is the reason why words like salah and zakah and many other words are written a little differently from how you would normally write them in regular Arabic. So every single mushaf follows this codex, no matter how different they look aesthetically. However, in terms of their formatting, they might be different, and this can make your experience easier or a little bit more challenging. So if you are a beginner, or about to start learning the Qur'an, or you might already be facing some challenges, this lesson can help you decide what is the best mushaf that suits your skills and needs. First, there are majorly three main styles of mushafs. In terms of content, they are exactly the same, of course, but their formatting is different. We have Arabic, Turkish, and Urdu mushafs. Within each of these three categories, there are several variations, which are just aesthetic and organizational changes. But eventually, these variations follow the same formatting pattern and the punctuation system of the category. So what applies to one variation applies to the rest within the same category. So which of these three should you use, especially if you are a beginner? The way we're going to do this is simply compare a number of criteria and characteristics and see how they are presented in each mushaf. Let's start with the first one, which is their availability. And right away, it is no secret that the Arabic mushaf is the most widespread mushaf, which you can find in almost any masjid you can go, regardless of where you are. So if you are used to using it, you won't have the problem of having to use a mushaf that you're not familiar with its symbols or its system, simply because it is available everywhere. Also, the majority of Qur'an apps that you can download also use Arabic mushaf, so you'll never have to switch. This, however, cannot be said about the other two. Turkish mushaf is mostly used in Turkey, and the Urdu mushaf is mostly used in the subcontinent. The second criteria is their style of writing. This is of course a matter of getting used to something, but for my personal preference, I would always go with the Arabic mushaf because of how stretched and relaxed the words are written, so they are not crammed up next to each other, which is very important for beginners to know where words start and where they end. It is also available as a digital word file with even extra spaces between words, to make it even easier for you to identify each word on its own and know where they end. It is also particularly useful if you're learning to understand the Qur'an in Arabic and want to learn to recognize words. When you compare that to the other two types of mushafs, the words in some of them are quite narrow and crammed up, especially in some versions of the Turkish mushaf, where some letters of separate words seem to be too close to each other, giving the illusion that they are the same word. Of course, if you're used to it, it's not a big deal, but if you're not, it might cause some problems. The same goes for the Urdu mushaf, but at a much smaller extent. However, if you are someone who is already able to read Urdu, this might not be a big problem at all. In fact, going from reading Urdu to reading the Qur'an in that style might be a huge advantage, as it is for many much easier to use and read than using the Arabic mushaf. Third, and most importantly, Tajweed assistance symbols. Every mushaf contains Tajweed symbols that can offer some assistance to beginners to save them the time of thinking about applying a rule or not. When it comes to the Arabic mushaf, it contains many types of Tajweed assisting symbols, like the difference in the shape of tanween in the state of idhar versus the state of idgham or ikhfa. Also, the nun sakina in the state of idhar is written differently from when it is in the state of idgham or ikhfa. Notice how the nun here is written with sukun symbol on it to indicate that it has idhar, while the other one has no diacritics at all, which means that it either has ikhfa or idgham. Now, of course, in this particular case, it has ikhfa. The same goes for other words that contain letters that should be assimilated into one another. You will find that the first letter of which will always have no tashkil on them to remind you not to pronounce them. These can help learners identify some rules that could be confusing to beginners and know when to apply which rules. However, this cannot be said about the other two mushafs. All cases of tanween are given the same symbol. Also, the cases of nun sakina are all given the same treatment. And words that require assimilation are not treated any differently. They are given the same diacritic. However, it is worth mentioning that in certain cases, the Turkish mushaf indicates the assimilation of letters under the word itself, which is really good, but unfortunately it is not applied throughout the entire mushaf, so it is not applied consistently. However, in both Turkish and Urdu mushaf, they have a special symbol for iltiqa'u sakinain with tanween, which is also known as noon qutni. This case has a special symbol which is a small noon written on the tanween itself. But this symbol is not used at all in the Arabic mushaf. This means that if you're using the Arabic mushaf, you have to depend on knowing the rules and when to apply it accordingly. Next is how each mushaf is dealing with Hamza. In all three mushafs, the tashkil of Hamzat al-Wasl is not indicated, which means that if you want to start at that word, you'll have to know the rules of Hamzat al-Wasl in any case, which is of course understandable since Hamzat al-Wasl is dropped when you keep on reading. However, in the Arabic mushaf, Hamzat al-Qata' is given the Hamza symbol plus the tashkil on it, while the other two, they only indicate the tashkil without the Hamza symbol, which I think could be confused with Hamzat al-Wasl since they both now look very close to one another, unlike in the Arabic mushaf. The final point in relation to tajweed, which is how each mushaf deals with connecting mad. Connecting mad is mad as-sila, which is a mandatory mad that exists between two words when both words are connected. In the Arabic mushaf, connecting mad of ya gets this symbol, and the one for dhamma gets this symbol. Notice how much of difference it makes when it is indicated after a word. إِنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكَ إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ. Notice how we said إِنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. We didn't extend the dhamma in the word إِنَّهُ, but we applied ishba' and we extended it by saying إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ, but we didn't say إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ. This is exactly the essence of connecting mad. For Urdu mushaf, connecting mad is also indicated using other symbols. It is clear and can be seen, so you know when to apply mad as-sila and when not to apply it. However, in the Turkish mushaf, there is no indication of mad as-sila when it comes to dhamma, which means that the learner has to depend solely on knowing the rule to read it properly. This is of course not a big problem, but it might cause some problems for beginners or those who do not know the rules exactly, which could result in mistakes in recitation. Finally, the stopping and resuming symbols. The Arabic mushaf does not typically have many stopping symbols, which means that the learner will make emergency stops more often, and they will have to apply stop and repeat routine. However, the Turkish and Urdu mushaf contain much more stopping and resuming symbols, even between the ayat, and also there are symbols indicating where you can end your recitation without worrying about the meaning. So this is a big advantage for beginners using one of these mushafs. And yet, avoiding unsound starts and stops is a necessary skill that all learners have to learn eventually. And now, it is the main question. Which of these three should you choose? Well, if you are starting and you have the ability to choose, I would certainly recommend the Arabic mushaf. First, for being very common and that many sources on the internet use this system. So it would make sense that you get familiar with this one. Also, the main aids that are offered in terms of tajweed can be very helpful for beginners. And finally, for being easier to read and recognize the words, which is a nice way to get familiar with Quranic vocabulary. The one that I would not recommend is the Turkish mus-haf, unless you are used to it, or you are advanced and know the rules very well, and that is because of the reason I just mentioned on the connecting med. Added to that, the fact that its writing style can become very narrow. If there are versions that avoid these challenges, then it will be a very solid choice, especially when having many stopping and resuming symbols. As for the Urdu mushaf, if you have no problem or difficulty when dealing with Arabic mushaf or reading Arabic letters, then I would definitely go for the Arabic mushaf. But if it looks too unfamiliar to you, then I would definitely go with the Urdu mushaf to make it easier for yourself. In any case, whatever you decide to go with, just make sure that your mushaf is not on the shelf collecting dust. And for those who are already using a mushaf, which one are you using? And why did you choose that one? Share your experience with others and let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you want to start reading and understanding the Qur'an in Arabic, then you should start your journey right here. And don't forget to check out my latest book, which goes perfectly with this free course. I'll leave the links for all of them in the description, so check them out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.